Welcome to Paradigms at paradigms.life, the radio show and podcast that brings you inspiring people with visions of a viable future for life on Earth that includes humans. Hi, I'm Baruch, host of the show. Glad to be here. Thanks for listening. We've got two wonderful guests. They've known each other their whole lives. They've been making music together since they were teenagers. They've just released a record, music that comes from their experience growing up in rural United States. They're going to tell us all about it. So let's meet my guests on this episode of Paradigms. Nick Pankey and Kaston Guffey, My Politic. Welcome to Paradigms.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
It is completely my pleasure. You have a really amazing new record out that I want to talk to you about that's called Missouri Folklore, Songs and Stories from Home. But I also want to talk to you about the album that preceded it, which is called Short-Sighted People in Power, because I feel like they're a set. And one, which was recorded and made a few years ago during the presidency of you-know-who, very pointed. A lot of the songs have words in them we can't play on the air, but I just love it. Love this album. It's like you're telling it like it is. And then you've recorded this other amazing album that is so personal. So talk to me, guys, about who you are and your lives and how you got to be doing this. And then let's talk about the music. So how did you guys meet, first of all? How did all this happen?
Thank you for all of that, all those compliments. I can't believe it. I think we should just pack up and call it, we should call it. No, that's really nice of you to say all of that. So to begin, Nicholas and I grew up together in the town of Ozark, Missouri, which is southwest Missouri, between Springfield and Branson. We played in different bands early on, but then at some point about 15, 16 years old, we kind of split off and started doing more acoustic stuff and recording. I was writing like batches of songs and we just wanted to record them. And so we just started doing that when we were maybe like 15, 16. I remember I couldn't drive and you could drive.
Yes.
At the very beginning of it. Yeah. So somewhere in there. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a truck and I had gas money and you didn't.
Correct.
But you had 12 songs at a time. So it worked out for me.
Yeah. So we just, we started recording with a buddy of ours, stepdad, Jamie Carter, had a studio in their basement over in Nixa, and we started recording there and learning how to record our own stuff. And he was just a really cool guy that taught us how to do a lot of things on our own, and kind of gave us a little bit of a philosophy of just, keep making the stuff, keep recording it, and keep getting better at it. And if you do that, at some point, you'll have all this stuff, and I remember that very vividly. And I've just like literally kind of lived by it, because it made the most sense with the way that all the songs were coming out. It's just like, that's the only way to keep any of this in order, So I mean, that's how it started. And then we moved to Boston when we were like 19, 20 years old, somewhere in there, and then lived there for a few years and made some records in our apartment with Nick recording all of it in his room. And we had the cords running under doors, and we had a tiny little apartment, And then we ended up moving in 2013 to Nashville and lived in a house there for 8 or 9 years and made a few records, I guess 4 or 5.
Or something, maybe.
Yeah. Just trying to get better at it. And eventually, when COVID hit, we kind of pared it back to just doing what we started doing. And, Missouri Folklore, this new record, we had probably 75% of it ready to go. And what I thought would be the whole thing, like we were thinking in 2020, we were going to record this batch of songs, because if we were ready, because the last record we had put out was 2017. And it was a big record. It had like a full band on it and everything. And we did it at the Sound Emporium. But then COVID hit. And so all that went out the window. And Nick and I were living together at the time. And I had written like 1.5 songs that were really politically pointed extremely. And I started thinking like, oh, it would be kind of an interesting idea to take whatever time that we have here to just keep writing songs like that and record them as they came out, just in Nick's room, So that's what we did. And over 8 months, like 7 of the songs came out. We recorded them and then we released them like right before the 2020 election.
Good timing.
Yeah. So I mean, it was really just kind of an experiment and something to occupy our time when we didn't really know if we were going to be able to, when we were going to be able to get back at it. Sorry, I'm talking a lot, Nick. You should talk more.
Sorry, it just started raining here. It's lovely. Yeah, we were kind of just early on. We were the only guys that everybody played music. Everybody plays music everywhere. It's like you play cover music. Everybody's inspired. Kaston gets a weird bug, starts writing. And he's not writing things that make any sense. They're like bigger shoes than he's supposed to walk around in as far as like how much fun it was to play and like people enjoyed it. Like it was good. So then here we are 15 years later and I know how to record it all, I guess now. It's just a very, very fun, interesting hobby that allows you to go play in front of people and keep writing and keep just kind of creating. And there's really nothing else to do. So I don't know what else we would be doing, like you still have to do everything else everybody else does, but we just create this thing and technology kind of met us at a spot where for relatively, little cash, I can teach myself and learn how to capture it all. And now we've got 16, 17. We should figure out the exact year we started because we don't really know, but so we've got that much, music and all the live shows we've done with bands and just so much material to listen to. And I don't know, it's like a workhouse full of like furniture you built that nobody's really sitting on, but it's there and it was fun,
Yeah, it's something that we really love doing. And I think the process of writing is just my favorite thing in the world. And it's the most interesting thing I've ever come across. And getting into the full process of doing the whole album and like, going through that at an early age and just like, even though, that stuff isn't good, it's like not, it's not good at all, but it was like something.
But at the time we were stupid enough to be confident that it was good. And that's what gets you through, that's how you learn the new thing,
You're listening to my conversation with Kaston, Guffey, and Nick Pankey, My Politic, their new record, Missouri Folklore, Songs and Stories from Home. We'll be back with more of this conversation talking about their partnership, their creative process, and these songs. But first we're going to hear a track of music from the new record. It's the first track on the album. It's called What a Life, My Politic, on Paradigms, at paradigms.life.
Spiders weaving webs all across the yard. I can see 'em glisten while the sun retreats over the hill. Cars full of people with holes to fill make their way to the same old ending of a different day. I wonder if they wonder about going on this way. What a life, they say. Counting all the train cars just to make a gain. Can there really be that many hours in a day to waste away? Recalling baseball stats from when I was a kid, as if studying averages was the only thing I did. Now I wonder if I'll ever use those numbers again. What a what a life, they say. And if we only measure goodness up to the goodness that we see, who's gonna kick it off? Could it possibly be me? That possibility's got me climbing up a tree. Maybe all this ain't such a waste of time, counting cars and spider webs and drinking all this wine. I wonder if my wondering gets me anywhere tonight. What a life, they say. Night finally comes and the shadows on the lawn take the shape of giants fighting just for fun, and the rain begins to fall, and I can taste the earth hovering in the air. For a moment I'm a child outside the house where I grew up, and I wonder the number of times that taste has crossed my tongue. What a life, they say. I can hear an ambulance screaming down the highway. I hope that someone still has a life, then I go on living mine. For a moment I can feel the pain of somebody getting a phone call, sir, she skid out in the rain. And I wonder how somebody goes on living that way. What a life, they say. Well, surprises don't come easy, other times they do. Routine can mean stability, or it can be the death of you. Well, it's midnight now, there ain't nothing else to do but to hope that all this wasn't such a waste of time, counting cars and spider webs and drinking all this wine. I wonder if my wondering got me anywhere tonight. What a life, 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 they say.
What a life. That's My Politic, Nick Pankey and Kaston Guffey from their new record, Missouri Folklore, Songs and Stories from Home. It's a big record. We're only going to get to hear some of it, so I hope you'll check it out. Now let's get back to my conversation with Kaston and Nick. Short-sighted people in power is very stripped down, but Missouri Folklore, you've got some wonderful players on there in addition to you guys, and so it's musically lovely. But I want to talk about the very personal, emotional, political, it's very human. You're singing, this is about the human condition, all of it, both those records. I'm sure your other ones are too. And so not everyone finds a way to take their experience of the human condition and turn it into art so that other people can get something from it. That's a skill and a talent. That's a gift. And you have that. So then we go to the content. You're singing about some very intense stuff: drug addiction, poverty, disenfranchisement, people suffering, human suffering, and you're doing it in a way that's very accessible. I guess I don't even know. I don't know if I even have a question.
I mean, I can try to talk about that. I
Do.
It's an interesting thing to think about from different points of view of it, right? Because you're kind of coming at it from just listening to it, right, and experiencing it. And I don't really do that with it because that would be very strange to me, you know. And so I kind of know what you're experiencing through when I hear other songs that do that to me. So I think I can understand, but it's like I can't quite. But what I can think about is it took me a while to figure out in the writing process. But I think what I really like exploring and doing a lot is big picture, maybe philosophical. I hate to say that about myself, but like kind of bigger picture stuff, and then finding some way to like get it inside of personal stuff, you know?
A human story.
Yeah, I don't know how it happens, and there's no real explanation for it, but that's what I feel like I'm constantly doing in my brain. And so I think a reason why some of the stuff comes out the way it does is that, you know, that's a portion of it, you know. I'm also just really interested in kind of all of that stuff, you know, like I'm interested in politics and I'm interested in philosophy and science and sociology and like all of this history. I mean, all that stuff is what I care about and think about all the time. So I think I want to reflect what's going on now because I feel like it's an important thing to do. And I think sometimes in our genre, whatever genre that is, but like sometimes it can be really nostalgic heavy in a way that like worries me because it can be such an escapist situation trying to like think about good times or old times or whatever. And then there's just this big void where like, you know, what's happening now is less or harder to, I don't know. With short-sighted people in power, I think particularly I was really interested in trying to crawl inside of the characters of or inside the heads of people that were thinking these things, because some of them are in my family and like they're people that I know and grew up with and raised me, and it just was unfathomable to me that they would like go down that route, you know, road. And so I was just trying to deal with a lot of that. And so, yeah, so I think just generally the process of writing for me is trying to learn about a lot of different systems or ways of writing, you know, like I really like film and screenplay writing and stuff like that. You know, I've never done any of that, but I think the way I think about it kind of has no other possibility other than to like just influence how the songs are coming out. You know what I mean?
There is a cinematic quality to some of these songs because they're stories about people, and the way they're written, we immediately are identifying with the people. I mean, the song Albuquerque is really powerful, and thank goodness it comes around to a positive end, because by the middle of the song, you know, it's devastating.
That's a story. I mean, we put out a record in 2015, and I wrote a song about my sister struggling with heroin addiction. She struggled with that for 10 years, you know, 10 plus years. And in the song that we put out in 2015, the character doesn't make it, and I was writing it for myself because of the anxiety that I felt. You know what I mean? So I was kind of like playing that out.
And also that was the reality at the time.
Yeah, because it felt like that was at any moment that was going to be the case, you know, and it didn't end up that way. And so maybe in 2017 or 2018 or something, I was thinking about it, and I wanted to tell the whole story for real, you know, and so
So you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we put on this record because it fit right into the theme of the thing.
I'm talking with Kaston Guffey and Nick Pankey. My Politic is the name of the band. Their new record is Missouri Folklore, Songs and Stories from Home. We're going to hear another track from that right now. This one's called Driving Home to You.
We were in Missouri when the call came on. They were shipping you off to Vietnam to kill them people in the Viet Cong. You were there and then you were gone. I remember you being torn about it. You never said much, but your eyes did scream. You said you had to go, so you went, and I cried for 13 months till they told me you died. Maybe that was the last time I ever felt like a kid. Catch a glimpse of that feeling every now and then. When I catch 'em broadcast the Cardinals on the radio, when I'm visiting Mama in the fall in her nursing home, when they call a home run I think of you, how you'd be coming undone, how you'd be coming unglued. You always loved the game, I always tried to do the same. But sometimes the pain's too much, I can hardly make it through. When I'm driving through Missouri in the fall, the windows down listening to baseball, ain't nothing could convince me it wasn't true. I was driving home to you. The day we buried you up on the hill, we were left alone with a hole to fill. I was numb to the pain, Mama just sat still with a blank stare and a broken smile. Well, I tried to stick around, but it was hard to do, with a future unfolding and a past like glue. I said I had to go, so I went and we cried, had to grow up again in the blink of an eye. Maybe that was the last time I ever felt like a kid. I catch a glimpse of that feeling every now and then. When I catch 'em broadcast the Cardinals on the radio, when I'm visiting Mama in the fall in her nursing home, when they call a home run I'd think of you, you'd be coming undone, how you'd be coming unglued. You always loved the game, I always tried to do the same. But sometimes the pain's too much, I can hardly make it through. When I'm driving through Missouri in the fall, with the windows down listening to baseball, ain't nothing could convince me it wasn't true. I was driving home.
It's a pretty powerful song, Driving Home to You, My Politic, from their new record, Missouri Folklore, Songs and Stories from Home. And now let's get back to my conversation with Nick Pankey and Kaston Guffey. This is Paradigms at paradigms.life. So, Nicholas, I want to ask you, since Kaston is writing these songs, what's it like when he brings them to you?
Yeah. I feel like it's very hard to describe. People have asked a lot of questions about his process. And it's like, to me, we grew up in the same soil. We were just kind of like stupid teenagers, really trying not to mess our lives up, like just trying to like do our best and like get out of our hometown alive in a way. So like, I don't know. He would knock on, like, I lived with him and his family in high school. They took me in and knock on my door after he was making noise for a few hours. I would hear him in there. I was like, oh, there's something coming out of here. I can hear something coming out from under the door, and then he'd come knock on my door. I've got this thing. It's really bad. Nobody's going to like it, but maybe there's something interesting here. So like, play that out in your head over 17 years or however long it's been. And it's just the two sides of the same coin, as far as he's got an interest in some sort of like, there's a well of information that he doesn't really know what it's, he's figuring something else out. And my interest in it is, it just happens to line up with capturing it, and arranging is all the harmonies, all that stuff that I do is my experience with the subject matter of the tune, because, he's not going to write a song about his sister that I don't know. The first 3 lines, I'm like, oh, we're going to get a song about this. It's like, because we're there. It's inescapable because you're just there. So I don't really know how to describe it. I would just say whatever he said is probably how it went.
Well, you know each other so well, probably there isn't much need for explanation between you.
It makes it difficult. I think people sometimes might find it rude because I think that they know that, like, it's like, just pretend that you've driven in a car with somebody 20 hours a weekend, every weekend for 5 years. You know what that person's thinking, what's going on, it's just how humans, it's the only thing that makes humanity fun, right? You build those bonds with people and you go through life, and it's great,
You're always in the middle of the conversation because it's a long conversation.
Really long one.
And to me, that's the best thing about his songwriting style, is it's very zen, as far as, like, it's just, this is what's happening now. This is how I feel now. This is what I think about it. Put it down. You don't get a lot of reflection on the old tunes other than playing them live and having fun with them. But you don't get a lot of reflection on it because that's not now. Now is different. It's now. It's, it's not when those songs were written anymore. So you get new stuff, and not new stuff in a manufactured way, new stuff in a very organic way before COVID hit, we were sitting on 20 to 30 tunes, depending on how you'd slice it up, demos and stuff, and deciding what we wanted to make a record of. And it's like, oh, we had too much. We didn't know how many people to divide over. There's too much, and then it worked out. Oops, it wasn't too much. It was just enough to get you through.
You're creative people. Everyone's creative. We create our life with every breath. And so my creative work is as a psychotherapist and in making this show. So those are the 2 things I do, and they feed me. I get a lot from both of those things. They also take a lot, but it's worth it. That's life.
Yeah.
I'm interested in how what you do nourishes you.
Oh, I think I'm really starting to get into some interesting kind of understanding, I think, just now. And it's really not, I'm not even close to understanding it, but it's like, I do think that if I reflect on all the things that I'm kind of like gravitate towards and get something from, it's just a lot of processes or a lot of like systems that I find really interesting, and like trying to understand them and like get to the bottom, very curious. And so, like, I think the songwriting part, it's just mysterious enough to keep me like going further into the cave with my little lantern, and and all I can see is what's in front of me, and it's like enough, you know what I mean? I don't know. It's like, that's what it feels like. And so I just keep doing that and finding new ways. It's almost like it's something I can pour my attempt to understand hard processes and hard things into that, turning over of new things and interesting things. And that's like all that stuff, I talked about before, like history and science and philosophy and politics and all that stuff. But it's also, I just moved to a new place like 3.5 months ago. It's also people. Like, I am so enthralled by meeting other people. And so it all just like goes into my brain, and then the writing and the creating and the process of that just like allows me to deconstruct all of that stuff in a way that my brain, it makes my brain happy to do it that way, I think.
What about you, Nicholas? How does this feed you?
So it's kind of like what I said before. I think things were so turbulent early on that it was kind of, other people always say, oh, without this, I don't know what would have happened. And you always think about that and you're like, well, yeah, I think that that's true. I think that, like, if I didn't have music to play and I didn't have some sort of proof that there was something bigger than me that was more important, it might have been, very different for me. So to me, I don't know if I think you said the word, how does it nourish you? And I like that. But I think that like, what's bigger than that? Like it's like it pinned me to the ground and kept me from floating away, you know? And I don't think I knew that at the time, but I think now it's like, I think I'm just serving some weird dissonance, you know, some weird polarization thing.
It's more than nourishment, it's survival.
Yeah, like it's nourishing in the fact that it kept me going, but it also, you know, if your analogy of the cave, which I'm getting ready to read The Republic again. If your analogy of the cave is, you know, you're holding onto that lantern because it's dark without it, and when it's dark, you give up. So that's the same thing, you know. Man, I didn't know you were going to be asking me these good questions at night. It's 9 a.m. here, man. I've only had, you know, this is tough stuff.
I think that light 2 thing is crazy because it's like, it's like keep feeding it almost. It's almost like you have to keep giving it fuel, you know, and that's like a cycle that I don't feel trapped by it at all. Like I am very excited about it. You know, I'm very happy about it.
Well, you can feed it anything you want.
Yeah, I think it's the only thing that can really get me in there, you know, like, you know, it's the tool that like I can use to like get to the bottom of some stuff, you know.
And I don't think that that's obvious to people. Like for me, getting in a room with you and learning to like sing and going through all that stuff and kind of learning how to, you know, if you sit in a room, if anybody tries it, sit in a room with another person for like 3 or 4 hours and try to figure out how to sing a basic harmony together, and you'll feel the proof that it's something, you know.
Right.
And that's kind of all there is to it. I think you prove to yourself, you're like, okay, this is real, this exists. Enough people have talked to me afterwards to prove to me that they feel it too when it happens. So I'm going to keep doing that.
Yeah.
And when you're actually in the singing moment of harmonizing with others, it is like no other experience.
It's the number one thing.
It's a feeling of wholeness that I just have never felt in any other way. Maybe gardening.
Yeah. Gardening.
Yeah. I mean, it exists. Yeah, it exists other places. But for me, that was my proof, you know.
We'll be back with more of this conversation with Nick Pankey and Kaston Guffey, My Politic. And here's another one of the songs we were just talking about. This one's called Albuquerque.
She was pregnant in prison when Christmas rolled around, and wondering if she'd ever feel relief from the pain of existence or the heartache she'd found, or from the numbness the needle brings. Now she's fighting to be somebody worthy, strung out in a prison in Albuquerque. She's a long way from home in southern Missouri, pregnant in prison in Albuquerque. Desperation comes easy for a junkie on the run, stealing parked cars to get right again. For 10 years of using what landed her here, but this time she ain't going back where she'd been. Yeah, she's fighting to be somebody worthy, strung out in a prison in Albuquerque. She's a long way from home in southern Missouri, locked up and determined in Albuquerque. saving treatment for an age-old condition. Her mama was too sick to come hold her hand while she pushed for a new life in a faraway land. Now she's come to believe she's somebody worthy, a mother to kids in southern Missouri, a long way from the bottom in Albuquerque. She just finished college in southern Missouri.
Albuquerque. That's My Politic from their album Missouri Folklore, Songs and Stories from Home. It's a really powerful song, luckily a happy ending. Okay, here's the next part of my conversation with Kaston Guffey and Nick Pankey.
You guys grew up in a fairly conservative religious environment, and you have questioned what you were brought up with and arrived at some different conclusions than the ones you were offered. And I don't know where you're living now, but how does that work, like with your families, with your communities? Because, we hear about people having huge schisms in their families over the politics, and, which is really painful for people. And so how do you deal with being who you are, where you grew up, and all that, dissonance or whatever we want to call it?
Yeah, I mean, it's been the last, since 2015, it's been a mess, to be honest. My family's just been like totally different situation than it was before. For me, it's like it started off politically, but it really quickly got into an intellectual, like, I don't know. It's a very tough situation because I'm just so conflicted at how to go about it. So I have no good answers as far as that's concerned. I mean, it's just really hard,
Yeah, I also have no good answers.
I've leaned heavily into getting my head around some, deeper understanding of things. That's kind of what has helped me feel better or feel more relaxed a little bit, about stuff. Sometimes I get the opportunity to feel that way a little bit more, maybe. I don't know. I mean, to me, it's like, short-sighted people in power has a lot of anger in it and righteousness or whatever you want to say. But at the end of the day, it's like, I'm really just trying to observe and take a temperature of like what's going on kind of at all times, and my own personal, I don't really come to a lot of conclusions in my brain. So everything feels very fluid, right? So it's like, I agree. I find things going in the worst possible direction they could be going, and it's like, I don't know how to deal with people not being on the same page. I'm worried about our inability to share truths, like share basic, like foundational stuff right now. That's something that I think is scaring me in a big way, I
mean, short-sighted people in power does have a lot of anger in it, and which is part of what makes it satisfying to listen to. But Missouri Folklore comes back around in the arousal cycle of our nervous systems to kindness and compassion and grief.
Yeah.
Which is really what we need to get to.
Right. And so that's kind of a very interesting place. I think right now, in the last few years, I mean, it's just been so chaotic and so up in the air. And I don't know, it's so hard to land right now. And I think everybody's trying to attach themselves to something. And this is just, for a person like me, it's a very kind of anxious time because I really worry about, and I see a lot of people attaching themselves to things that are comfortable or feel good or have all of these great attributes to them, but underside of them is really dark, you know, and like not the way forward. It's, you know, so it's just very strange time, you know.
What about you, Nicholas? How is all that in your life?
It's a complicated relationship before all that happened anyway, because just long story short, things have been shattered for a while. But the relationships that were strong beforehand, I think it went schism for everybody because you ended up having to get into like, it's not that like, you know, Mitt Romney wants to raise your taxes and Obama doesn't. And we're talking about some kind of vague policy thing that's talked about on the news. You're going to like, oh, this person doesn't want to let Muslims into the country, which in the job that I had at my day job at the time meant 3 people were stuck in Iran for a weekend. So like I experience it. So these people that don't experience it think that he's just trying to protect the. So you end up, they forced you into this conversation of just like finding out what people actually believe. And we're kind of in the business of asking that question a lot because you have to create stuff, you know, you have to ask a lot of questions and inevitably you turn inward. But, you know, nobody wants to blink. Everybody, they want to back into their corner and they want to say, this is how it is. And for people that have other experiences, you know, you were talking about, you know, your experiences and stuff. It's like, those are reality. When the people on that side of the fence present their reality, it isn't nearly as thought out. It isn't nearly as connected to humans being treated fairly. And it's not nearly connected to really anything other than their inability to take a loss and accept that maybe they were lied to and maybe that they bought it and they bought a lie. And everybody does. And learning to just, if they could just admit that and be like, yeah, I was really upset. I wanted somebody to get in there and pay these politicians back because I've been voting since 1984. Good. But that was a mistake because people are fleeing the country because there's today on this date in America today, they're having a National Day of Hate thing. That's like a hashtag and people are going to show up and do things. And like, I made sure my partner wasn't going to work downtown. I was like, hey, we're, you know, like, are you working tomorrow? She's like, no, good. Because we're not going to go. We had a neo-Nazi break the window and throw a firebomb into the Capitol building down here in 21. So it's like, or the library or one of the buildings, Google it. It's the information's there. So I think that those things are extremely serious. And I think that those things are worthy of more than well, I like the Chiefs and you like the Redskins. Like it's way bigger than that, man. And if you're not willing to treat it bigger, like treat it, you know, in that way, at least respect it that way, then we have issues. And those issues they're not insurmountable, but we definitely believe very different things about humans. You know, we definitely believe very different things about how humans should be treated and how much I should have over somebody else. Like we have different, not that mine are right, but we do believe different things and we need to come together on some of these things if we want to be friends.
I always go to, I don't care what people believe, I care how they behave.
Yes.
Right. You know, believe whatever you want. You can dislike me or hate me or think, but treat each other decently. That's basic.
Yeah, and they're not doing that.
National Day of Hate. It makes me feel sick.
Oh yeah, I mean, I saw it yesterday, and I was, you know, maybe hopefully it's not a very big thing at all. But in America, these things are easy to organize and easy to show up. And how many years ago was the Tiki Torches? I mean,
yeah,
we need every day to be a National Day of Love. I know that sounds. I'm a hippie. As far as I'm concerned, the hippies were right about everything, and I hold to those values.
Well,
it's definitely, we definitely haven't tried it, have we?
We'll be back with the final part of my conversation with Nick and Kaston. Here's another track from their new record, Missouri Folklore, Songs and Stories from Home. This is Buzzards on a Power Line.
I grew up in a small town, got in trouble with amphetamine. Said I turned my back on Jesus, they went and turned their back on me. Then I blinked and I was 29. Well, I knew I had to sober up. When I kicked it for the first time, that's when I could clearly see. They're like buzzards on a power line, waiting patiently to take their turn and pick apart what's left behind. When I ain't dead yet. Well, I moved away and I got a job. Well, I took some college courses, learned to curb the cravings one day at a time. When I'm back for holidays, it's like they all line up to see me, to remind me of the way I was. They can't believe I'm doing fine, 'cause they're like buzzards on a power line, waiting patiently to take their turn, pick apart what's left behind. But I ain't dead yet. Yeah, they hold themselves so high above me, I can hear them talking quietly. When I needed someone there to love me, they were too hungry to see. To them I'm just another failure to look down on. I wish they'd leave me be. 'Cause I ain't dead yet. I don't find myself at home anymore. Well, I relapsed after my mom died. At the funeral I was a mess, like they expected me to be. I just can't stand to have them see me now, all grown up and living clean. Can't imagine they'd have much to say that wasn't based on some worn out memory. They're like buzzards on a power line, waiting patiently to take their turn, pick apart what's left behind. But I ain't dead yet. Yeah, they hold themselves so high above me, I can hear them talking quietly. When I needed someone there to love me, they were too hungry to see. Them I'm just another failure to look down on. I wish they'd leave me be. 'Cause I ain't dead yet. Yeah, I'm growing stronger every day. Sometimes I wonder if they'll ever see the kind of person I've become instead of who I used to be. Try to think about it less and less anymore, focused on letting go and being free. I ain't dead yet.
Buzzards on a Power Line. That's My Politic, Kaston, Guffey, and Nick Pankey from their new record, Missouri Folklore, Songs and Stories from Home. These stories are potent, stories from the place these guys grew up. All right, here's the final part of our conversation.
So that leads to my next and final question for you guys, which is, what are your visions of us moving through this and into something better?
This is a family show. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm in process with it still. So where I am now is very different than where I will have hoped that I was at 2 years from now, thinking wise,
There's a lot of people that I know doing good things. It's really hard because I think a lot of people feel really let down. The right, Trump kind of came in and acted like a populist and he was faking it. And that, but there is some populist aspect of things is felt on both sides of the situation. And it always has been. So I think people that aren't necessarily political or don't find themselves in those camps feel pissed off, like feel upset about things and like want things to be different. And so I've just moved to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I was living in Nashville for 9 years. I live in Pittsburgh now, and I live in this little community that it just feels different. Number one, to live in a place that's going in the other direction, more in the direction I want to be in. But so I think there's a lot of people with good ideas that I think are being implemented because of the time that we're in, focusing on local economies and trying to like here it's an affordable enough place for people like my age that are starting businesses that are LGBTQIA friendly and like, very inclusive. And there's just a lot of interesting things people are doing on the ground that are real, that are like actually gonna change things, So, I think that's hopeful. As far as trying to get back to like a set of truths and like a deeper like connection, like a just like, hey, we can argue about all these things, but like there's got to be something like underneath all of this where we can stand together to like talk, the public square, whatever you want to call it. I have no idea. I mean, I think social media is a bad thing. I think like a lot of stuff could just be different in a lot of ways. So I don't know. There's big questions for sure.
Well, this music belongs in the commons, so that's part of it.
Well, yeah, thank you. And I mean, we're just going to keep making stuff that I want to reflect the time that we're in, and I want to do it in a lot of different ways. Short-sighted people in power was a way, and Missouri Folklore it was a reflection on our, where we grew up in a lot of ways. And like, some of it was my own story, but then a lot of it was just looking around. And, so I just want to keep making sure that it's in there, that people for down the road, I mean, I think long term that trying to belong to the full history of the thing is important. So.
One of the things I love, and I've only listened to these two records, is that the theme of your humanity is constant, but you're approaching things in there's a lot of flexibility in your points of view. And I really appreciate that. I think that's valuable.
Well, thank you. That means a lot.
Well, thank you both so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us. This was really cool.
Kaston, Guffey, Nick Pankey, thank you so much for talking with me. It was a really great conversation, and so happy to have met you both. Love what you're doing musically. Really enjoyed learning about your collaboration. Just think it's great music that you're making. So thank you. And folks, if you'd like to know more about My Politic, check out their other records, including the one we talked about in the episode, Short-Sighted People in Power. The website is mypoliticmusic.com. Definitely check them out. And this new record, Missouri Folklore, Songs and Stories from Home, we just heard a few of the songs. There's a lot there to listen to and take in and enjoy. And if you enjoyed this episode of Paradigms, I hope you'll check out our archive at paradigms.life. That's the website. You can also find Paradigms wherever you get your podcasts. Paradigms has a Patreon campaign going to pay the bills. We just had a big increase in server costs. Patreon.com/paradigms. We really appreciate the support. The political schisms in the United States, which continue to create so many problems, in part stem from the huge economic gap in the U.S., the haves and have-nots. There's a whole lot of people who feel left behind, and their feelings of being left behind are being exploited by politicians. People are guided into attitudes that create the schisms that we've been talking about. I think there's learning and healing that needs to be done. So the word for the week is going to be collaboration, in honor of the collaboration of Kaston and Nick from My Politic, and to inspire collaboration between all of us. That's how we're going to make things work better. So how do you collaborate with others, working on things together to make things better? We're going to close out the show now with one last song from My Politic's new record, Missouri Folklore, Songs and Stories from Home. This is called Maybe It's Love. Baruch signing off for this episode of Paradigms. We'll be back next time with more inspiring people. Until then, collaborate and be well.
Jimmy's tending bar, Joey's drinking gin. They both wanna go home and they're in it till the end. It's 2 o'clock, things are closing down. They're making conversation while the lights go out. They go home together, maybe it's love that they found. Who knows if it's love that they found. Amy's on the road, singing songs for tips. Brendan's catching every word that's leaving her lips. They joke about the difference between Missouri and where she's from. They share a pack of cigarettes and laugh until the early morning comes. Back at her hotel room, maybe it's love that they found. Who knows if it's love that they found. Someone to hold on to, someone who understands. You won't know what love is until you found it. It's a never-ending mystery, no matter what you plan. You won't know it's there till you're surrounded. Gina studies hard, wakes up with the sun. Leroy's smile is big and wide, and he was built for having fun. They grew up on the same street, a couple blocks away. The thought of love had never crossed their mind until today. They locked eyes at the company happy hour. Maybe it's love that they found. Who knows if it's love that they found. Maybe it's love that they found.
You've been listening to Paradigms at paradigms.life.